American patriots, this is a plea. As Reagan once said, we are one generation away from our freedoms being extinct. Fast forward to today, I believe we are one election away from our freedoms being extinct. We can no longer be complacent. We must stand up and fight for America First conservatives at all levels of politics. I will refuse to be the generation to explain to my kid what freedom was like. Decades of damage has been done. It's our time. It's our country. It's our freedoms. You are listening to the Light of Liberty podcast. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Light of Liberty podcast, where we spread truth to safeguard our freedoms. Borderline heroic efforts continue across this nation by everyday Americans. Grassroots movements are making their impact, and our voices are being heard. Our founding fathers put everything on the line. Their status, their property, their riches, their wives, children, everything was on the line because they saw that freedom was more important than death for the future of man. Today we celebrate them as well as the birthplace of freedom that is the United States of America. And just like our forefathers, we will let God and the light of liberty guide our way. Here with us today to give us insight on what's happening on the ground in Pennsylvania with these grassroots movements, President of Shield the Truth Network, Dr. Doug Pfieffer. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Pfieffer.
Thank you, Josh and Greg. Thanks for having me again. I feel honored to be here this weekend in particular. Independence Day is something that's very important to us in our organization and just important in general, as it should be to every American.
Absolutely. Happy 4th of July, listeners. Happy 4th of July to you, and happy 4th of July, America. So, Dr. Pfieffer, have we reached critical mass on the leftist ideology this week or these past 2 weeks?
I don't know if we're quite there yet, Josh, to be honest with you. There's more to come. I'm telling you, these things are happening so rapidly, it's almost difficult to keep up with. And, I know I'm having trouble with that. I appreciate what you guys do to get the word out. We're trying to do it through Shield the Truth Network. And, I think we're doing a great job. We have some wonderful people who are involved with that aspect of what we do. And obviously, one of our tenets is education. And one of yours, obviously, is.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do we stand? Where does STN stand? Give us a status update on since the last time we spoke with you.
Sure. Well, a lot's happened. I believe since we spoke, we had our rally. We had about 500 people at our rally. I think you guys were there. I know. We had our keynote speaker, Senator Doug Mastriano, soon to be Governor Doug Mastriano. And that was our draw, guys. I have to say, he brought folks from everywhere, including 2 reporters from the Washington Post who were with us that day. I did my best to try and keep them from being with us, but we had an open forum, so I couldn't hold them out. They were there the whole day, took pictures, wrote an article, which was exactly as I thought it would be, about the Christian conservative movement in Pennsylvania. And I wouldn't say that it was a positive article about the Christian conservative movement, which I didn't expect. But the fact that STN attracted the Washington Post is pretty cool. So the opposition is aware that we exist, and the opposition is actually, I don't want to say scared, but aware of what we're doing. So, a lot of things, guys. We have joined together with a group of probably 80 different organizations, very similar-minded organizations across the Commonwealth. And we were able to put together what we call the declaration letter, which basically states that we are demanding of the legislators in the Commonwealth that they eliminate mail-in ballots immediately and require in-person voting with an identification card. So we're taking that to every legislator to have them sign it. And on Flag Day, an appropriate day, any legislator who did not sign it at that point had demonstrators in front of their local offices with signs saying Act 77 needs to go, and why didn't you sign the declaration letter? Fortunately, I was able to get, STN was able to get all 3 of our local legislators to sign the document. with our state senator, our two representatives in the area. And so we got everybody we could, and many of the other organizations did the same. So just amazing things happening, guys. We have our state legislative committee chairman who's been doing some unbelievable work on what's going on in the legislature with different bills that are coming up, and also our school board committee. I mentioned them before. They are doing some unbelievable things to uncover a lot of what is being put out there relative to CRT in our local school district, and that's happening in every school district. So it's not just isolated to ours. So we're just hot on the trail of everything that's going on and trying to give our members answers and things that they can do as far as action steps to combat what's occurring.
I love how you're working with other grassroots organizations. We, I guess, are trying to do, I guess, the same thing, helping how we can, talking to some of the grassroots organizations to promote them, promote what's going on in the state and what's going on in the country. So you're working with them, and we're looking at reaching out to find more to work with us to have a conversation like we're having with you today.
And spread that information, because the mainstream media is not going to do it. The independent journalists are going to spread that information. We want to try to reach as far out as we possibly can with these grassroots movements, because it's going across this whole country, and people are starting to wake up, but people don't know. There were, I think you said, or before we were talking, before we hit record, you had 80 different grassroots operations you guys worked with, and just alone in Pennsylvania, going around on Flag Day. So that's incredible, and we want to spread that information and let the American public know that we, the people, it's our time. It's our time to relight that light of liberty and move forward and safeguard these freedoms.
Yeah, mainstream media is not doing it, like we keep saying. The Washington Post showed up at your rally.
Let me add something. Yeah. So I didn't get to read the article that they wrote, but they were seen in your prayer tent, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So, and then they go ahead and write this article for the WAPO, and it's...
Well, and one of the things that's interesting about that, now that you bring it up, our Spiritual Warrior Committee had a prayer tent at the rally. And so the photographer came over and they said, "Can we pray for you?" And her immediate response was no. And they said, "Well, can we pray for someone else?" No. They did take a picture of those individuals praying over Mastriano, and that was a big headline picture for them. But, to us, that's a good thing. Yeah. To them, that's something that they can chastise us for, I guess.
And it's crazy because you watch Josh Shapiro just blabber on Twitter, and Doug Mastriano is just in his head rent-free right now, and it's all about Doug and what Doug's going to do, and it's like, that is just free advertising for this side of the campaign. And I was like, if you're going to continue to run your campaign like that, that's bad news come November for you. But hey, more power to you.
Exactly. And it's just like our 45th president said, it doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative. It's news, and you're in their face. Yeah. And that's exactly what's happening with this. They have so much money on the other side. All they're doing is attacking. You don't see any ads about what Shapiro's done or is going to do. You see an attack ad every single time there's something on there about him.
Yeah, it's not a campaign for Shapiro. It's a campaign against Mastriano.
It is.
I've seen...
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's very telling in and of itself. The fact that they're campaigning against Mastriano and not for Shapiro at this point.
Yeah, and we're seeing
they know the support he has.
I've seen the Democrats on social media who are coming out again. I've seen these posts already from them, even referring to Shapiro, saying, "Hey, you need to stop the attacks, and you need to promote something, what you're standing for, what you're going to do." Because I've seen even they're getting tired of it's just the attacks and nothing positive.
Yep.
Yeah,
a lot of, I'm sorry, Josh, but I was going to say a lot on the other side are not only understanding more so where we stand, they're becoming, turned off by what they're doing on the other side. So that bodes well for us as well.
Yeah, I see that constantly, and the main argument is they're blabbing this and this. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're attacking them, and then donate to us. Donate to us.
Hey,
Send us money.
Give us some money.
Send us money. But you look at these representatives, multimillionaires, worth over $100 million. Some of them, and they're asking money from their movement and their people, but they haven't done anything. What have they done for them and for you? And that's what I always tell people. Is like, what have they done for you? Anything other than ask you for your money.
Yeah.
To then do what? To ask you for more money.
There's so many. Yeah, I mean that boils down to a lot of things. Everybody asking for it.
Yeah.
I like following. There's a gentleman, Scott Pressler, who he has his own initiative going on.
Does great work.
Yeah, he does. Getting people to change their registrations, and he puts out a lot of numbers from a lot of different states of showing the transition from, how many Democrats are changing over to the Republican vote, or just so he's showing the numbers of 2 years ago. There was this many registered Democrats in this state and this many registered Republicans. And now he shows the numbers and you see the shift.
The gap's closing.
Yeah, it is. And and in some states, it's, the pecking order has been changed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, all we have to do, guys, to a great degree, is just allow the guy in the White House who's not really doing anything, but allow his administration to do what they're doing. Because they are destroying what was built for them prior to them coming in office. And as they do that, exactly what you say, Greg, is occurring. More and more people from that side are shifting over. It comes down to money, guys. It always does. People look at their pocketbook and they vote based on their pocketbook, and also relative to the campaigns. It's unbelievable how much money the other side has right now, and how much money is being spent on even these local campaigns. Campaigns for state rep used to be, tops a couple $100,000. Now you're talking a couple $1 million and more to run a state rep campaign. And that's crazy.
Yeah. They're trying to get that America First individual, the average American, to not even have a chance to even run, because the pockets are so deep, and that's the control they want to keep, and it's on both sides. This is
absolutely.
This isn't just a or a partisan issue. It's on both sides.
We can see how money, started at the foundation of America here. I mean, when in the 1770s there was tax after tax being levied against the states, and that's what led to our being.
And even after the revolution that was occurring. So you saw people like John Freeze with Freeze Rebellion over the window tax, okay? Because not many people had windows in their homes at that time if they were not well off. So it was basically a tiered tax based on the number of windows you had in your home. Yeah. And they had tax collector guys that would come out and they count the windows on your home, and you'd be taxed for every window you had. John Freeze went to Harrisburg, and basically they were put down as insurrectionist guys. John Adams, they were to be hanged, and John Adams pardoned them. So, this has gone on forever on both sides of the aisle. Nobody is blameless relative to taxation, and it continues to go on and on and on. And whenever a tax is removed, you can bet your bottom dollar it's going to be placed somewhere else.
Yeah.
You never lose, you never save on taxes. It's just shifted around. It's like a shell game.
Yeah, and that's what I always say. I said, when is someone going to campaign on actually reducing tax? Are we ever, because it'll never just reduce tax and the burden on the everyday American.
We've seen that.
And you just watch the government just mismanage this money. And now, like you said, I think before the show, that Governor Wolf is wanting a 30% increase.
It's almost
37% increase for the public school system, when an average student in Pennsylvania averages $19,000 a year, I believe, and we can't get it done on that?
And
They
here's
can't
another
get the
little
education on $19,000 a year?
here's another little statistic. I believe they have somewhere around $5 billion in reserve, the state school district fund. $5 billion in reserve. I mean, these are crazy figures relative to what needs to be done with a child's education, which is teach them how to read, write, do arithmetic.
Yeah.
Kids can't even write. Kids can't spell. We're graduating individuals that shouldn't be graduating because we can't hold anybody back either. I mean, everybody's got to be equalized.
Yeah.
The whole system is so screwed up that we cannot get to a point. And to your point, relative to cutting taxes, look at what happened in France when they tried to change the age of retirement. I think they were going to bump it up to 67 to get their Social Security or whatever over there. There were riots in the streets because you have to understand, once you make people dependent on something that you're giving to them, and you try to take it away, because that's always the issue with cutting taxes. You got to cut something. And if you take things away from people, they don't like that.
Yeah.
So, there's a whole societal and sociological issue that you have to contend with when you're talking about doing something like that, because it impacts people, and people are comfortable with a lot of things today and the way things are. And it's unfortunate, but that's just our human nature, I guess.
Yeah, we see that retirement age, 62, 63, and so many people in this country, it's like we set that as the goal. It's like, all right, I'm just going to keep working and working and working until I hit that plateau. But then so many people don't have any plans after that. It's like, you don't have to hit that plateau and stop working. I mean, just keep going on. I mean, when you hit that plateau and you stop, life ends. You die a lot of times.
Yeah. Exactly. And who came up with that figure of 65?
Right.
I mean, there are stories about that go back to medieval England. And part of the reason was that they wanted to get people out of the way so the wise men wouldn't be contending for positions of power at that point. So, who knows where that number came from, right? I'm going to be at that number in less than a year, and I'm not going anywhere. So, I don't get where people kind of get this concept that, I'm 65, it's time for me to sit in a rocking chair and, just wither away. No, you have a lot of knowledge, wisdom, information that you can share, and that's your job at that point.
Yeah. Knowledge is power. Action is more power, So let's moving on here. All these SCOTUS wins that are happening, as I like these battles. We are winning some. Again, Greg alluded to, we do lose some, but these are ginormous wins. SCOTUS are dropping. And there's one that just came out in particular that I'm looking forward to. They're about to hear a court case out of North Carolina, and they're going to look at the independent state legislature theory, Article 1 of the Constitution, that states that the state legislature is the sole responsibility on election laws, not the courts, the state legislature. And back in 2020, we had a lot of issues with courts getting involved, especially in Pennsylvania. Texas even tried to sue Pennsylvania over their hand in our election. I think this could be the mother of all bombs here for SCOTUS coming forward. Where do you see this court case going?
Well, I mean, if you look at this issue relative to the Constitution, there is absolutely no question how it should be interpreted. And that's the job of the Supreme Court, right? It's to interpret the law. It should be interpreted accurately, i.e., exactly what you just said, Josh, is how it's outlined in our Constitution, Article 1. If you read that article, there's no wiggle room. The states are mandated to formulate the confines and the laws of their elections, not the federal government. And this goes back, listen, if you really think about this, this goes back to Hamilton versus Jefferson. Jefferson was a states' rights guy. Hamilton was a Federalist. It goes back to the Civil War. It goes back. I mean, this is constantly something that we grapple with relative to states' rights versus federal dictates. But this particular issue relative to voting laws and structure of the voting process, the election process in every state, there's no question the states are mandated by the Constitution to develop that process, not the federal government.
Yeah, we are the United States of
Yeah,
America.
And like you said, I mean, so this topic has been broached before, and it'll happen again. So it's a matter of where we give inches again, and compromise with the federal government, and the states, and then we lose too many inches, we lose yards, and then we're losing the game. So, and then we fight again to have a comeback to get back to the Constitution.
It takes.
So the cycle shows that we might do it again if as long as we keep allowing inches to be taken from us.
Yeah, and look at Roe v. Wade. It took a generation to make that switch.
Absolutely.
We can't give away these inches. We got to really think of policies going forward and the long-term effects of them.
Well, and look at what just happened with this bill that the guy in the White House signed relative to firearms and the red flag law money that now will be available to states that institute red flag laws, which in my opinion are neo-Nazi laws relative to turning your neighbor in or turning anybody in for any reason. There's no due process. You have to prove your innocence. You're guilty until you can prove you're innocent. But, my point is this, that was a quote unquote bipartisan bill. What happened to the guys who are lesser magistrates? And that's a whole nother story that we could get into. The guys who are supposed to be protecting us on our side that we put into that office to be representing us, to protect us from these dictates that come from above, right? So they're the intermediaries. There should be some intercession relative to what they can do to protect us from ridiculous stuff like these red flag laws. But it's like my dad always told me, the other side, and he was referring to the liberal side, they get a foot in the door. That's just the beginning. That's the crack. And then they keep pushing it open wider and wider. And that's what we're going to see with that bill that was just signed into law. Okay. So, I get viscerally angry about stuff like that. When I see these what people call rhino politicians, I just call them, individuals who are not doing their job. They are not representing us, those who put them in office. The first time I saw that and heard it was when Marjorie Margolis-Mizvinsky gave the deciding vote not to impeach Clinton. And she said on camera, I do what I think is best, not what my constituents want me to do. It's over at that point, boys. You're done.
Yeah, the whole role of the office is to represent the people who put you there. And in that instance, she just spit in their face saying, well, thanks, you got me here, but I'm doing what I want to do now.
And I think we've been spat in the face a little too much. And groups like STN, Audit the Vote PA, they're rising up. And we, the people, are going to somehow take back this country because that's what needs to be done. And we need to do it legally, peacefully, moving forward, and we gotta just attack on that end from the ground level up, and let our voices be heard, because that's what makes change. That's what they did in 1776, and they put everything on the line. And you look at people like Mike Lindell putting his business, and look at the attacks, and he's just getting slaughtered by mainstream. He's putting everything on the line because he's one of the truest patriots in this country, trying to have a voice in a world of the establishment suppressing our voices. And like you said, it's communism 101, and it's scary. And we got to focus on 2022 midterms right now. We still got to focus on fixing what happened in 2020 and not letting it happen again. So what are some plans that SDN has for the midterms coming up?
Well, number one, we want to make sure that we rally folks to understand what the issues are and make sure they get out. That's issue number one. Number two, we have to make sure that their vote counts, and that there's no nefarious, crazy stuff going on like there was in 2020. Anybody who thinks that election was not fraudulent just has not looked at the facts. I mean, we played 2,000 Mules for our members. When you watch that movie, I don't care how steeped you are in, the liberal politics. When you look at what happened, I mean, you got people literally. So the way they got paid, according to the movie, when these mules, was they had to take a picture on their cell phone of the drop box and a picture, I believe, of them putting the ballots in, and that's how they got paid. If you didn't have the picture, you didn't get paid. So you see, why would somebody walk up to a drop box and take a picture of it if there's not some nefarious reason, right? And why would people stuff ballots in the box to the point where they're falling on the ground and they're picking them up and shoving them in? I mean, this is just, if you have common sense, you look at it and say, something's not right there, guys. So, we're looking at ways that we can, if these drop boxes don't disappear, which we're working hard to see they will, if that doesn't happen, we're looking at ways that we can watch. We had talked about that before, our organization did. But, it's rallying the troops to say, hey, we need somebody there 24/7. Yeah. So we got to have shift work. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that respect. But also, here's another thing that's important for us, is making sure that we understand, just like they do on the other side, we need to be in lockstep behind the people that we are running for office. So, I've spoken with individuals who weren't necessarily in the legislature, who weren't necessarily supportive of Doug Mastriano. And I said, listen, where do you stand now? And they say, and I have to take them at their word, that is our candidate. We are going to support him as our candidate. And we're going to see that they do. Okay. But I think that's another thing that's very important for us to recognize. Nobody is perfect. None of these legislators are exactly the way we want them to be necessarily, but they are running on our side, and they are going to be way better than the individuals running on the other side. I don't care which part of that damn ticket you're talking about. So we have to be in lockstep to support them as well. And that means getting out there, rallying for them. We want to have STN wants to put together for our local politics, state reps and Senate candidates, a kind of like a town hall, so we can get them out there in front of our members, have them, give their 5-minute stump speech, and then get some Q&A going. Okay, you better be able to answer questions, because you're going to get hard questions from our people. But, we don't want you to shy away from that. So those are some of the things that we're looking at doing. And, again, organizing with the other groups across the state to be able to do things like what we did with the declaration letter. Does the declaration letter have teeth? Not necessarily. I mean, we're getting the individuals to say, yeah, I support these ideas of no more mail-in ballots and, in-person voting with voter ID. But we would need a bill to get that through the House and Senate to get it actually as the law. So, that's another thing that we're working towards. But can we get it done by November? I don't know about that.
Yeah, it looks like Missouri Governor Parson, he just signed a sweeping election bill enacting new voter ID. So which will be, it's not implementing in their primary that's coming up, but it will be at the general in November. So that's fantastic news across the nation there. So, but
I see people have to produce ID all the time, just in general life. You go into go into a lot of stores. I mean, look around. You'll see people showing their ID when they go to the bank, to cash their check or something like that. And they have no problem doing that, you know what I mean? But I don't think it's so much the people that have a problem with ID it's the politicians, and they're inferring that the people have a problem with this, but it's really their own agenda is why they don't want ID shown at the voting polls.
Exactly. And Josh, you mentioned that the governor had this law that he signed. Our governor, even if we were to get a bill through that says no more drop boxes, voter ID, all that stuff, for a fact the governor we have right now is going to veto that bill, which would then mean we need 2/3 of the Senate to override the veto, which is going to be real tough to get.
I guess I guess that's my next question here, because we talked earlier in the show about the independent state legislation or legislature theory. Does the governor's pen have anything to do with enacting amendments to the election code? If it's up to the state legislature, I guess he has to sign it into law, correct? Mm-hmm. And obviously, if there is a veto, but if we read the Constitution and interpret it, that it's the legislature's responsibility to make those laws.
And I don't think it is, and hopefully we're going to see this happen real soon, because we know Mastriano, his poll watcher empowerment bill, has passed his Senate first, and now it passed the House. So now, I guess we're going to have an example coming up very shortly.
We could.
It goes to the legislature, hopefully, and they, and it goes through. Hopefully, we'll see that's something that he can't veto.
Well, and to your point, guys, the nefarious actions that took place between the governor, the attorney general, and state Supreme Court relative to Act 77 is an example of how, in my opinion, illegal activities will take place relative to any bill that they're not comfortable with. Act 77 was not the way it appeared after those three groups or individuals changed it, after it was voted into law. I mean, if you really study what happened with that, it's crazy. And it never should have happened. Legally, it never should have happened. But they got around all that by using the state Supreme Court to say it was okay. And I just don't feel that this administration will stop at anything, above and beyond the veto power of the governor to eliminate any potential legislation that they disagree with. That's just an example of how they can do it, I guess.
Yeah, and in their defense of Act 77, they always point back to saying, that all the Republicans signed on with that, and they leave it at that without the information. It's like they signed on to the original draft of it, and it is in no shape or form or way, what they actually signed into law from what it started out at they signed on to.
Yeah, and that brings me to just the level of corruption in politics, and that's one of the main frustrations I have, and I'm sure a lot of people have. And you look, especially in Pennsylvania, with our Secretary of State's involvement, and then she resigns, right, just shortly after the election. So, and then I kind of followed that. Did you know that she is now on the board for the Center for Internet Security, which is a nonprofit out of New York? So she will head the CIS's elections security mission as the vice president of election operation and support.
But see, this is how it works. They never go away.
I know, right? Yeah,
they just take another form.
We had at my old place of employment, we used to say the F up, move up, and this is scary, because you brought up earlier about our representatives, and we're both in Montgomery County, so that's why I said our.
Correct.
the level of corruption in Montgomery County, and what scares me is, I mean, you look back a few years ago, Josh Shapiro was on the Board of Commissioners in Montgomery County, right? So, and I don't know if Joe Gale is a friend of ours. I know he had bad-mouthed Mastriano in the past. So there's the GOP just in Montgomery County is, I do not trust them. I mean, I don't trust any politician in general.
Correct.
But you look at the Brian Fitzpatrick, who's a huge rhino. He votes on with Nancy Pelosi like 80% of the time. It's
he voted for that gun bill.
He did, absolutely. Yeah. And the people like him have such a stronghold in that district right now. And then we just got redistricted to his district, so it's very unfortunate. Right. But it's crazy to see how much of a stranglehold they have on certain districts. And people just keep voting for them. And it's crazy because my neighbor next door, or right across the street, I have great conversations with, conservative, got him the signed petitions for Mastriano, Kathy Barnett, and so forth. And just before the election, I see a Brian Fitzpatrick sign out in his yard, and I'm just like, no, like this guy just keeps voting with the left policy, and he is a rhino by definition. And it's crazy to see that these people just stay in office.
Well, and I hope you had a conversation with your neighbor after you saw that sign too. If you didn't, you need to.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But this is part of the game, and this is why I honestly hate politics.
Yeah,
because it is dirty, and it's always been dirty. If you go back to even what went on between Hamilton and Jefferson, dirty politics on both sides. So that's just the way it works, and you have to be a certain kind of person to I guess enjoy that, but be part of it.
Right?
Yeah. A party you has to be able to be lighthearted about it and enjoy it and be able to turn the other cheek. It's
but
you're not gonna we're not gonna change everybody over and my goal if my goal is just to change the person I want to change the ideal. They change their way of thinking, or just enlighten them to something else.
I think
exactly.
And I think the hardcore leftists in this administration is doing that for us, as you alluded to earlier. And they are definitely not doing a service to their party and moving it forward at all, because their base is switching, as Greg said, to Republican registrations, and it's. I don't want to use the word "it's happening," but
it's happening.
It is happening, right?
And we keep talking with people, have this conversation, and some of the people we talk to, you just know the conversation's going nowhere, and then that's kind of the point. It's like, all right, well, let's just stop for now, and we'll come back to this later. We'll start again, and just keep having the conversations. Don't let it escalate to the point where it all breaks down, and then there's no communication afterwards.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you guys are educating people. That's one of STN's tenets, is to educate people. And that's the way we're going to turn them around. So in communication, you get to a certain point where you have to be discerning about where you are relative to, the headbutting component of communication. And when you get to that point, as you just said, Greg, you got to kind of let it go, diffuse it, let it go, come back to it later, let them ruminate a little bit about what you've educated them with already, and then, kind of pick it up later. So I think that's a wise way to be able to get the points across.
Those are the words I saw recently, watching somebody else's podcast, and it's reminiscent of when we talked to you before, talking to you now, and other people, and how we need to, one of the mantras of trying to run our podcast here is, entertain, educate, and then equip. So
there you go.
Yeah, by entertaining, keeping this lighthearted, having a good conversation, hopefully we're keeping people listening to us and watching us. Then the education is the topics we're talking about, hopefully. And then equipping them is, how can we equip them? In this instance, like talking to you, your Shield of Truth Network. So, you have, you're the equipment, I guess, we're promoting right now. People to look into you, become members of Shield of Truth Network, get out there, listen to what we're saying, volunteer for local groups,
it's time for action.
Start your new idea, and roll with that. Ask for help.
Right. And organize. That's really one of the reasons that I started this organization, is to bring people, the like-minded people together, organize them so that we can accomplish something. Fragmented, we don't accomplish anything, but structured and organized together, we can accomplish a great deal. And it's not easy to put that all together, because you have so many different personalities and people who want to get the pitchforks and the torches out, and you have to just kind of draw them back and say, look, and I did this at one of our meetings. I had someone stand up and they said, well, I want to do something now. And I said, well, that's fine. Do you want to go get your pitchforks and torches? But you're going to be labeled as what? As insurrectionists, or whatever other term they choose to use to label you. And that's a whole nother conversation, guys, that we could get into about what's going on with that whole situation right now.
And then they call up the red flag law.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, they use things like that as ammunition. We cannot give them ammunition, okay? We have to take the high ground. We have to be the ones that are above all the baloney that they're throwing around right now, and educate people relative to what the truth actually is. And that's difficult to discern a lot of times, as you guys well know.
Yeah, and it's hard because the mainstream media obviously isn't on our side. I truly believe they're weaponized against us. I've been calling them journalistic terrorists. But recently, the narrative shift has been these J6 hearings, right? Which are a complete, absolute asinine joke.
I wouldn't even call them hearings.
And it's a clown show. But it's that narrative control. Are we seeing that slip away in mainstream media? What is the next narrative? Because they literally had to put on a production now to get well staged to get a narrative on their mainstream. What's next?
Well, let me count the narratives now, right? So what number is this now? This is just, I'll be quite frank with you guys. I'm very ignorant about the hearings, quote unquote, because I refuse to watch them, because I saw just a little snippet one day and I was like nauseated, because when I grew up, I was so proud of the fact that you live in a country where you're innocent until proven guilty. It's flip-flopped in this particular case, as an example. You've got people who have a vendetta, who are accusing someone of something without any retort, without any kind of recourse from defense. Yeah. To show, no, that's not really true, other than the people who come around afterwards and say, that was a bull-faced lie, that didn't happen. This is just insane. This is not America. This is not something that I ever in my life. Look, I think I told you guys before, 12 years old, that summer, I sat and watched the Watergate hearings. Now, I did sit and watch that. And, but that was both sides of the aisle. And it was well done, just like any type of a court case should be put forth. You have defense and you have prosecution, right? Not just prosecution, which is what you're seeing now. This is nuts. And I refuse to be a part of it. I refuse to even listen to it, because it's just not American.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's not the American way. It's a political hit piece. That's what it is. They hate Trump and they do not want him to get back in office. And it's like they are going to go all out. They're throwing it all out and everything on the line, no matter what their side wants them to do or what they're losing, because they fought so hard and they're precious, like Roe v. Wade and stuff. They're letting all that slip by because they are laser focused on not getting Trump reelected.
A lot of it was brought to us by, the evil little Patriot Act, that, wrapped with a nice, cute little name, but the Patriot Act is not something, it's working against Americans. It's not working for us anymore.
Yeah. Well, they used the situation at that time, and which side of the aisle brought that forward?
Oh yeah, that was ours.
That was ours. That was
Yep.
Bush, whether
Yep.
you want to call it ours or not. But that was something that was a tool that was, well, really the whole 9/11 thing was the tool they used to get that through. And it's really extremely sad, because every time we have something like that come forth, we lose freedom. And we lost a lot of freedom with that. And now, I'm reading a book right now on the inception of central banking. And when you read about central banking and who controls the money, we are just worker bees, guys. We are pawns in the process.
Oh yeah, we got.
It's really unbelievable.
That's another. We've mentioned WEF already. And then we also so. The evilness coming out of World Economic Forum. We have
Right.
WHO, which is a whole nother talking point. I mean, we can go everywhere with this stuff, but WHO, and Biden loves them and is giving up more of our rights to
Yeah, they're not hiding.
outside group.
They're not hiding anymore. I mean, they just came out with the liberal New World Order, and it's insane, and that's what we're fighting against. This is a global issue, and if America falls, this whole world falls.
Yep.
This is the last stand, and people need to understand how important freedom is, and how important freedom was to our forefathers. I mean, look at everything they gave up, and we have to value that and bring that back to the table.
Yeah, you have to be willing to sacrifice. That's what it comes down to. When I started this group, I said, I don't really care. I don't care anymore about, what people are going to think, or, I'll lose patience over this. I don't care anymore. This is too big and too important. And, if you look at, as you said, what was sacrificed by, you look at John Adams, the work that he did away from his family, never got to see his children grow. As a matter of fact, when he saw him, when he came back from France and Holland, he was like, who are these kids? Because they were adults almost at that point. So these are the sacrifices that they made, the sacrifices we need to be willing to make, because, as you said, Josh, we're the last stronghold, man. When we go down, it's done. And, we have to understand also that nipping away at our freedoms, including our Second Amendment rights, which they're doing right now, is one of the ways that they can disarm us so that we can't fight back. Right now, we can fight back. They do that, we're just, neutered.
Yeah.
I see something happening, too, that, we have such an influx of nationalities from all across the globe flooding into America right now. It's unchecked. I had a conversation a few weeks ago with a gentleman. He was born in America, moved back. His parents moved him back down to South America when he was a young child. And I guess he only recently moved back to America again, but he spent most of his life growing up in South America. And here he's a Democrat. He lives in Philadelphia. But out of the blue, just had this conversation with this guy for like a half hour. We're just sitting, in the middle of this parking lot, having this great conversation, and we were just so like-minded on all the ideas that we have, what we believe. But here we're registered two different ways. But he still sees America as, still, and I guess it still is the best place, right now on this planet. And all the freedoms that we have here compared to what they have in South America. And no fear. He lives in Philadelphia, and every weekend there's gun violence there, and deaths, and but he said in South America, any night, just walking out in the street on a town, someone can just walk up to you, pull a gun out, shoot you in the head, walk away, and nobody blinks.
Right.
Kidnapping is a job down there. They kidnap you, and they only ask for $200-$300, he said, because the families can get enough members together to scrape up that money and pay that ransom, and then they get their family member back. So it's an achievable goal. And it's just like things we don't think of here in this country, and it's just, it takes me back to, we're sitting here talking about all the freedoms we've lost. and these are freedoms they never had, and they look at it as how great this is. So they're coming here with that attitude, and they're not fighting for more. They're satisfied with what they get when they get here. And that influx of people coming in, overpopulating us, that helps transform the idea in this nation to allow us to give up more freedoms. They're the ones who are willing to give inches to keep those miles that they've just gained, whereas we've had those miles and we're getting rolled back. And it's like we're a minority also. Our voice is getting quashed by all of the others coming in.
Well, and so many thoughts going through my head as you're saying.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot to take in what I just rolled off there.
You're not kidding, buddy. But a good conversation you had with this fellow.
I enjoyed it. I was smiling. I talk about it still, and this happened a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and one of the things that you guys know, and I feel is important for everyone to realize, our president was putting up a wall, not to keep people in, to keep people out, because they want to come here. Many countries put up a wall to keep people in the past.
Germany.
Yeah, exactly. The neat thing about a lot of the people that are coming, like I told you guys, I'm down here in Delaware. We had a little water leak, and I was down there helping the guys who came to fix it. And both, Spanish American, Latin American, I don't know where specifically they were from, but they're willing to work, guys. They're willing to work more than the people who are born and raised here right now. Every single business that I go into, you see it all over the place. You walk into a business, there's a sign on the door, help wanted. They cannot get help. People don't want to work. And they've created that mantra. They have changed our society and our culture through this whole pandemic that they put forth, and gave people money and had them sit at home. And now we've created a whole group of lazy people that want to do that. Yep. So that's one issue that I do value relative to the people who are coming to this country. I want people to come to this country. I want them to come the right way, but I also want them to bring that value, that work ethic with them, because they have it. They've had to work. The other thing is that when my great-grandparents came here, they wanted to assimilate into the culture. They did not want to segregate themselves from the culture. And that's an important distinction that we have to recognize. We have people coming to this country that do not want to speak the language. They want to continue to speak their language. No, I think it was Teddy Roosevelt who said, in the United States, our language is English. And if you're going to be a citizen in this country, that is your language. And Teddy Roosevelt was more of a Democrat, right? So things have kind of changed a lot. But, I think there are some very great things in this country that are created by the quote unquote melting pot that we have, bringing people from various countries around the world who want to come here because this is such a great country, and assimilating them into our culture and our society, but not by segregating them into small groups. This is where I actually have a problem with using the term like Irish American or Italian American. I'd rather you reverse it. I'm an American Irish person or whatever, You're an American first. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw, did our new senatorial candidate give up his dual citizenship yet, or is that going to be after?
I think that was only going to happen afterwards.
He says it'll be after, apparently.
After. Oh, okay.
That's one of those tough pills to swallow that we were talking about earlier.
If that happens at all.
Yes. And it is a tough pill to swallow. And, I think many of us are sick and tired of holding our nose and pulling the lever, because it's a lesser of two evils. Yeah. And that's exactly what, in my opinion, we're getting in that senatorial race. But, we still have to do it. Not like it.
No, you're right. Because, and Josh will tell you, I struggle with this constantly, and he just, he has to keep reminding me, and others do too and stuff. I mean, Fetterman is going to be much worse for us than Oz. And my pipe dream, my wish of Kathy Barnett being there in the seat, I'm having dreams. I'm like, if only 45 would go and pull away his endorsement of Oz and tell everybody in Pennsylvania, hey, you know what? We're changing course. Write in Kathy come November. You know what I mean?
I know.
Because she has the numbers to pull it off. And I'm like, I could see this happening, but we would need him on board with that and others. But it could happen, and that's my pipe dream. But
yeah, but at the end of the day, I mean, we look at it. Let's be realistic and realize it's socialist, Marxist against potential rhino.
Yep.
We're gonna have to take that potential rhino,
and we have to hold Oz accountable. Yeah. So we're gonna need to get him in there, and then we need to nonstop remind him and badger him, whatever it's going to take to know he needs to do the job of the people.
Yeah.
And this goes back to my original comment about the fact that even though we don't agree with them or like what they're doing or saying, we still have to establish a relationship because it's the only way we're going to have influence.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So let's kind of wrap things up there, Dr. Pfieffer. We'll give you the last word here. How do people get involved with STN? And we'll hand over the mic to you.
Well, I appreciate that, guys. And I appreciate you having me here once again, and especially on this Independence Day edition that you're having. But Shield of Truth Network is an organization that is based on 3 tenets, and I reviewed these with you last time I was with you. Our biblical foundation, our constitutional framework, and our educational keystone. If you're in alignment with those, you're welcome as a member. You can go to our website, shieldoftruthnetwork.org, and you can become a member. All you have to do is say you agree with those tenets. We'd love to have you as a member. We would love to have you as a contributing member, meaning becoming a part of what we're doing. We have various committees. We have our state legislative committee, our spiritual warrior committee. We have our school board committee. We have our Second Amendment committee. I'm hoping that very soon we will have our human trafficking committee. If you have interest in any of those things or interest in bringing something else to SDN, we'll welcome you with open arms. We will be having another rally, whether it's going to be called a rally or a festival like we did last fall. We had a fall festival. That's going to be on October 15th. And we are currently putting together our slate of speakers, but they're going to be good speakers. I'll tell you that right now, just like we had with our Spring into Action rally that you guys came to. So we got a lot of exciting things coming up. We're working very hard, very diligently to expose what's going on, to educate those who are ignorant relative to what's going on. Not stupid. We have a lot of smart people out there that are very ignorant relative to the facts and the truth. So we're working hard, as you guys are, to see that we can get that truth out there. So once again, I appreciate you for what you're doing, Lamps of Liberty, and for having us on Shield of Truth Network. And for being aligned with what we and various other groups across this Commonwealth and across this great republic are doing right now. So thanks again, guys. I appreciate it greatly.
Absolutely. It is our pleasure to have you on the show. And I know you guys have a Thomas Jefferson quote I'm going to read here for you guys from your site, which is just perfect for us and for today's episode. If we are to guard against ignorance and remain free, it is the responsibility of every American to be informed. And that's what we do here. We want to educate, and SDN wants to educate. And as we continue these battles and continue the war, we must remember, we got to rise up, seek truth, ask questions, demand transparency. We must stand together and lend a hand to our neighbors. It's a long way, but it's the American way. The truth is what the people want. The truth is what the people will get. Nothing is going to stop us. Remember, believe in your freedom, love your freedom, defend your freedom. Freedom is everything. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Light of Liberty podcast. Please help us share the truth and safeguard those freedoms. Follow us on Twitter at Light of1776 and listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, and subscribe on Rumble and YouTube. And remember, Patriots, freedom is everything.